Hey guys, welcome to this year's Christmas video. Whether you're planning on cooking up a fully plant-based menu or you're the lone vegan in your family, these meal ideas should be able to help you out. There's everything from starters to sides to a dessert, all very good tasting and most importantly, really easy to recreate. Okay, let's get into it. Starting with this French onion soup inspired mushroom and onion soup. First off, cut 4 to 5 big onions into thick rings. Or half rings, I guess. Bring a large soup pot or a big skillet to medium-high with some vegetable oil. Once it's hot, add the onions, turn the heat to medium, and let everything fry for about 20 minutes. In the meantime, chop up some mushrooms of choice. Also mince 2 cloves of garlic. Once the onions look something like this, remove them from the pan and set them aside. Add some vegan butter to the pan you just used. Let the butter melt. Then add the garlic. And let this saute for about 2 minutes on medium heat. Next up, add in the mushrooms and let them fry alongside the garlic for about 6 more minutes. Now pour in the white wine and let that simmer for another minute or 2 before adding the onions back to the pan. Now add 2 bay leaves, some fresh rosemary, other miscellaneous dried spices, soy sauce, agave syrup, and white wine vinegar. Mix it all up. Lastly, pour in some vegetable broth and let everything come up to a boil. Then let the soup simmer for about 20 minutes on medium-low, seasoning it to taste with salt and pepper, adjusting anything if necessary, like if you want more sweetness, add agave syrup, if you want more sourness, acidity, add more vinegar, that sort of stuff. Also add more water or veggie broth if there's not enough liquid. You can either serve the soup with some bread on its own, or with some of these whole wheat puff pastry tofu spinach bites. First off, melt down some vegan butter in a small skillet. Once melted, add some minced garlic and let that cook for about 1 to 2 minutes on medium heat. Then add some defrosted frozen spinach. Season it with salt and pepper and let it cook for 1 to 2 more minutes. Good, set that aside. For the filling, we're making yet another variation on tofu ricotta or tofu cream cheese or however you want to call it. So grab a food processor. If you don't have one, use either store-bought vegan cream cheese or plain hummus. Instead all this. Add a block of firm tofu to the blender, along with some lemon juice and salt. Blend it up until smooth. Then add the garlic spinach mix. Taste test, and adjust anything if necessary. Now you'll need some puff pastry. This whole wheat one is from the organic store, but you don't need a fancy one like this. At least in Germany, the cheap brands at grocery stores sell accidentally vegan puff pastry. So for example, Gut und Günstig at Edeka, the Kaufland brand at Kaufland, but yeah, definitely check before buying. Preheat your oven to whatever it says on the packaging. For me, this was 200 degrees Celsius. Cut the pastry into small squares. Add a teaspoon-sized dollop of the tofu mix to the middle, and then form them into, for example, a triangle shape. Here I made like letter shapes. If you're going for the letter shape, place them upside down onto the baking sheet. That way they hold together better after baking. And yeah, they go into the oven for 10 to 15 minutes. And that's it. Moving on, this main meal is made up of crispy Brussels sprouts, some type of fake meat, this one is seitan, really good homemade vegan gravy, and horribly failed mashed potatoes, which we're not going to talk about. For the gravy, chop up some celery, a carrot, an onion, and some garlic. Also some shiitake mushrooms. To a big skillet or soup pot, add some vegetable oil and vegan butter. Let those two melt down together. Then add the mushrooms and onion at the same time and let them both saute for 6 to 8 minutes on medium-high heat. Then add the carrot, celery, and garlic, and let that continue to cook for another 3 minutes. Up next is some fresh rosemary, mustard, agave syrup, and balsamic vinegar. Maybe add the rosemary after the vinegar and agave and mustard. Yeah, that makes more sense. Also, here's some bay leaves and some cornstarch or flour. Make sure to thoroughly mix in the starch. Now pour in some red wine, or if you don't have any like I did, just some vegetable broth. Let the wine boil down for like 2 minutes before adding the main liquid, which is gonna be more veggie broth. Let this simmer on medium-low for 25 to 35 minutes. The liquid's obviously gonna evaporate over time, so keep adding water or more veggie broth and stir every once in a while. Now you could technically just take out the bay leaves and pieces of rosemary and just blend this whole thing up with a food processor. That way you get a more soupy-like consistency though, so it's not really like gravy. For this particular recipe, I actually prefer not using a food processor for once. Crazy, I know. Grab a small saucepan and a fine mesh strainer and strain the contents of the pot. Reheat it. Season it to taste with salt, and if it's not enough, you can definitely stretch the sauce by adding more veggie broth and some in water dissolved cornstarch, or just use twice the amount of veggies in the beginning. I'll have all the details and notes about that in the description as always. If you want to make your own vegan meat substitute, I have a recipe for a bean loaf on this channel. It's in my SpongeBob video. Yes, I made a SpongeBob video, and I love it. I can highly recommend this to anyone to make on Christmas, but for it to be a little less work, I decided to just buy a meat substitute here. You can use pretty much anything you can find, even like just fry some smoked tofu and serve it with the gravy and it'll taste good. Or skip meat replacement and just serve a bunch of sides as a vegan meal and like cover it in gravy. That works. One possible side dish could be these crispy Brussels sprouts. To make those, I first cut up some Brussels sprouts in half. Then I added those to a pot with water, letting them boil for 7 to 8 minutes. Then I drained the sprouts. Grab a big non-stick skillet and add some vegetable oil, and bring that to medium-high heat. If you want to make these super neat, then make sure they're all in one layer. If you make these for a lot of people, I would recommend you do 2 or 3 batches of Brussels sprouts, just because the more crowded the pan, the less crispy they all become. After about 6 to 8 minutes of frying these, add some minced garlic. Let everything continue to cook for about 3 minutes. Hit them with some salt. And some lemon zest if you're feeling extra. Last but not least, dessert. An apple cinnamon tiramisu, or just something that looks like a tiramisu but doesn't really taste like coffee. For the apple filling, peel 3 to 4 apples and cut them into bite-sized pieces. Add them to a saucepan along with water, lemon juice, cinnamon, vanilla, sweetener if you like, even though I think it's not necessary. For the cream part, we're gonna need some cashews that have been soaking in water overnight. We're gonna let those boil for about 30 minutes. Drain the cashews, then add them to the food processor alongside soy yogurt, preferably thick soy yogurt, lemon juice, vanilla, salt, and sweetener of choice. Blend it up until smooth. Get a smaller size casserole dish or a brownie pan and add a layer of speculatius cookies. I would actually recommend to do a second layer of cookies over this one, since they're on the thinner side. Add a few tablespoons of strong chai tea to these. In last year's Christmas video, I shared how to make speculatius cookies yourself, but that would be more work once again. You can also substitute them for any vegan cookie you like and any kind of flavor that you think fits with apples and cinnamon and all that. So digestive biscuits, for example. Add half the cream mix, followed by half of the applesauce. And another layer of cookies. Once again, feel free to do a second layer of cookies over this one. Then finish it off with the rest of the applesauce and the last bit of the cream. This whole dessert is very much inspired by last year's cherry speculatius cream thingies, if you couldn't already tell. Smooth out the top. Now tiramisu would be covered in cacao. I use cinnamon instead, but go light on the cinnamon. Maybe even lighter than I did. This was almost too much. Now this goes into the fridge for at least 3 hours. And that's it. And this was so good. And it's like basically healthy, right? I hope these ideas helped you guys out. Definitely let me know what you're making on Christmas. Send me some photos on Instagram. Yeah, also let me know what YouTube videos you would like to see from me in the future. I'm currently planning a little bit ahead, so I'd like to know what you guys want to watch. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Every second, every minute, man, I swear.